Hello, my name is Ruby Falconer, and I am here today to share an astrological perspective on the upcoming week from the point of view of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology. And today's date is April 5th, 2020. It's a Monday. So I want to first of all acknowledge that we've had a tough couple of 3 weeks. What's been going on over the last 2 to 3 weeks has been the first real alignment of the great shift energy with Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn all being in alignment, being in conjunction. And what's really kicked it off and really intensified the energy, which that energy is in effect for all of 2020 and really started back in January. But what really kicked it off into this higher level of intensity was the movement of the planet Mars. First of all, conjuncting Jupiter, then conjuncting Pluto, and then conjuncting Saturn. And all three of those alignments have passed now. And they were kind of brought to culmination, in a sense, by an alignment between Jupiter and Pluto, which was exact yesterday, April 4th, at 10:45 p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern United States. And this was an astrological big deal, so to speak. The principle of expansion in alignment with the Lord of the Underworld, Pluto, the god of death and rebirth. And that particular energy was in fact, it's still in effect now. Jupiter, it has passed Pluto, but it's still very much in alignment, very much conjunct. And it's been in effect for the last few days and will continue on for much of this week. So while we peaked with it, and the peak was last night, the energy is still there. And in terms of current events, it's really reflected in the widespread impact of the coronavirus around the world, but particularly here in the United States. And the way that the death rate keeps climbing, we're seeing an expansion of death, which is Jupiter and Pluto. And that's from, sort of a mundane, what we could call 3D level, the higher possibilities that are around this particular transit, which is, it's in effect all year, so it's going to take much of the year for it to come to fruition, are for us to continually look at how we want to build a new collective structure out of the ashes of the old. So what's happening now is we are in the midst of a dismantling, the death of an existing structure that's been around for a long time. Most of this alignment takes place in Capricorn. Actually, the actual conjunction of Mars to Saturn took place in Aquarius as Saturn has moved into Aquarius temporarily until July 1st. It's going to come back into Capricorn before it moves into Aquarius for a longer period of time next year in 2021. But the piece around the Capricorn piece is Capricorn has to do with governmental structures and the structure of society. So those of you who have listened to my previous talks or read anything that I write on Facebook or on my webpage, you know that I talk a lot about the dismantling of the structure of society. And this is also about the dismantling of structures within us as individuals as well. So it's not easy energy, it's painful, it's hard. We can understand if we choose to look at it this way, that it's a necessary dismantling, and we can hold the vision and the belief of something new and beautiful growing out of this. But when you're in the middle of death, it's not fun. It's not easy. It's very hard. It's painful. In the United States, most of us are in some form of quarantine. And so we really feel that restriction and the limitation that comes with the planet Saturn being strong in the collective zeitgeist right now. Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, God of Death, Jupiter, Principle of Expansion. It's kind of all laid out there. There's nothing easy about any of this. So this is the energy that we're bringing with us into this week. And as the week goes on, the energy will start to separate a bit, but it's still going to be pretty strong for most of the week. And some of the shifts that are sort of giving us a sense of a potential change in the future, not right now, not immediately, not tomorrow, not even necessarily next week, but a little bit further down the line. We've had the planet Venus Venus is Isis in the language of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology. She's the queen mother of heaven. Venus is the feminine principle, and most importantly, Venus is the principle of receptivity. It's about what we want to receive. Venus has moved into Gemini. That happened on April 3rd. And so, excuse me, April 3rd. So that is a lightening of energy. Venus in Gemini is kind of, I like to call Gemini the hummingbird sign, in that it flits from flower to flower, from subject to subject, from pursuit to pursuit, consuming as much as it needs. And it knows when it's had enough and when it's time to move on. And so there's a lightness of heart, a lightness of energy that comes with that position of Venus in Gemini. And Venus is going to be in Gemini for a while. During this period over the next several months, Venus is going to turn retrograde in Gemini, and it won't actually be exiting this air sign until August 7th. So we have quite a period ahead of us where there'll be a lot of the different aspects of having Venus in Gemini. The lightness, the movement, things happening very fast. In its shadow, Gemini can be about overwhelm, too much information, not prioritized, the whole shebang, the whole enchilada, so to speak. It's all going to come to us. And, I'll talk more about that in the future as we get closer to the time when Venus turns retrograde, which will be in May next month. Right now, however, we have that little bit of a sense, a little glimmer of a little bit of lightness of energy. And I did notice when I checked in with the news this morning, there was a little bit of talk of some potential light at the end of the tunnel. It's very distant, it's very faint, but it's a little bit there. That's a reflection of that shift in energy as Venus Isis, Queen Mother of Heaven, has moved into that light-hearted, fast-moving, energetic sign of Gemini. And we are going to have later in the week, we're going to have on April 10th, Mercury is going to be moving into Aries. And that's important too, because Mercury's been in this sign it's presently in Pisces for a long time, for a couple of months now. And so moving into Aries is going to be a shift as well. While it's been in Pisces, the gift of having Mercury is Thoth in the Egyptian pantheon. The gift is having our hearts open, having more compassion, but it's also a feeling of emotional overwhelm. Everything has its shadow, and that feeling of being kind of weighed down by the weight, the pain, the suffering of the world. That's Pisces in its shadow. And Mercury is all about communication. It's about the communication network that we are all, to one degree or another, hooked up to. And so, what I sometimes say about Mercury and Pisces, if the world's having a bad day, those folks with Mercury and Pisces have a bad day too. It's like they can't help but take it in. And so too for all of us during this time period. We've all been very interconnected with each other and aware of the suffering that's going on around the world. Even if it's not close to us as individuals, we're very aware of it. And we really feel it on an emotional level, we feel it in our hearts. So having Mercury move into Aries, and let me just check my book here as to when it's actually going to be. It's on the west coast of the United States. It's on the 10th, and it's early in the morning, 12:48 on the East Coast. And so you can kind of, if you're in other parts of the world, you can sort of figure out when that would be for you. But that's going to be another shift of energy, because Mercury in Aries is a very different kind of energy from Mercury in Pisces. Much less emotional, much more we're going to take care of business, we're going to move forward, we're interested in new ideas, solution oriented. Movement, warrior energy, can be combative, so that's a different kind of energy that's going to come in as well. So there are shifts coming, which is good to know. And I want to reiterate what I've been saying for quite a while now. This entire year, 2020, is going to be affected by the great shift energy that is centered around the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto. And this is a year of huge transformation and change. And so it's not like we're going to move through it and go back to the way things used to be. That's not going to happen. But we are going to find our footing in this new world and begin creating a new collective. And so that means that the place that we're at right now is extremely important, because we're kind of reeling right now from the pain, the suffering, and the shock of how complete and absolute this dismantling is. And I don't think we really get it yet on all levels, how much things have been dismantled. We're kind of in shock in some ways. And that shock is going to start to wear off, and we're going to start to adapt. And the very beginning of that process is happening this week, the week of April 5th. So I want to come even a little bit closer to where we are right now and acknowledge that we're still very much in that energy of what we've been, bringing with us over the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, feeling the intensity of that, the volatility of that, it's like it being body slammed, that energy of having this tremendous impact of events that we have no control over. We're still very much in that place and reeling in a lot of ways. So that energy has not faded away yet, and it will as the week goes on and we kind of get our footing a little bit more and begin the process of adaptation. But we're still in that place. And a very important piece in completing this part of the process of being, in a sense, body slammed by forces much larger than any of us as individuals or any of us as a collective. We've not been collectively prepared for this, either within our individual nation states or as a world. We've really been shaken to our core around this coronavirus and its impact and all of the ramifications that have come with it, economically and personally, and medically, and so many levels. So the completion of that part of it is sort of the shock wave. Comes tomorrow with the full moon. And so we have entered into now the full moon portal. And what I mean by that is, we have a point where the full moon is exact. And it is tomorrow, April 7th, 10:43 p.m. or 10:44 p.m., depends on exactly where you are, East Coast time. So that's Eastern US time is when the full moon will be exact. And full moons are always a combination of energy. They're always very intense, and they represent, kind of a tidal wave of energy that's been building, and then, as waves do, it ebbs. We get the culmination, and then it fades away, and it takes about 3 days for that process to happen. So we've begun the process. I don't know about the rest of you, but I had some difficulty sleeping last night, which is not my norm. I'm a good sleeper, but this is an intense full moon. I certainly felt it last night, and we're going on into it now pretty strongly. So we're in that full moon portal. It's a Libra full moon. The sun is in Aries, and so what that means when we hit the full moon, the moon's opposite. It's going to be on the 18th degree of Libra. The sun's on the 18th degree tomorrow, the 18th degree of Aries. And so that's the opposition that is represented by the full moon. And basically, the Earth is in the middle. If I'm the Earth, the sun's on one side and the moon's on the other, and the Earth is in the middle. And so we have these energies that are kind of coming into us. It's creating that sense of intensity, of emotional intensity. And to add to the mix, whenever we look at full moons to kind of get a sense of how strong of a full moon it's going to be, how intense it's going to be, there's always what the other transits are. And we very much have these energies of Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are aligned with one another. They're in what we would call a stellium. They're very close to each other. Jupiter and Pluto are still conjunct. Saturn and Mars are still conjunct. And tomorrow, Mars moves into a square to Uranus, which is kind of a dual thing. It's on the one level, it's a culmination of intensity. Mars is Set, the warrior king, the god of war, everything that comes with that. Mars is currently in Aquarius, which is the sign of the collective. So you get this sense of collective energies that are to one degree or another warring, and there's in collective intensity. Uranus is the great awakener in traditional astrology. In Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, Uranus is Wajet, and Wajet is the Cobra Kundalini queen. She's the one the cobra, who kind of works her way up our spine, and she cracks through any blocks to life force energy flowing. So whenever we're under a Uranian transit, we can expect there to be some shatterings taking place. And this particular square of Mars and Uranus is important because it's a prelude to a square that's going to come later, in a couple of months here, between Saturn and Uranus, which is going to be dominating along with the ongoing great shift energy. We're going to have Saturn and Uranus in a square to one another off and on throughout 2020. And so this particular, in some ways, is this movement of Mars into square to Uranus is sort of initiating that energy. So we got lots of intensity still going on, and we can expect that this full moon is going to be emotionally intense. And so I wanted to share a little bit, in a few minutes here, I'm going to invite everyone to go on a little journey. I wanted to share about the Egyptian archetype that is aligned with the air sign Libra. It is the Libra full moon. And before I do that, just let me say a little bit about what Libra is in traditional astrology. Libra is the sign of relationships, and it's traditionally sort of thought of as being the sign of partnerships, intimate relationships, marriage relationships. But it's not just that. It's really the relationship between I and another. And so that's, the relationship, work relationships, friendships, family relationships, acquaintances, and at a very kind of broad-based level, it is how we as individuals relate to others. It's that ongoing I-thou exchange, okay, between how we as individuals are affected and impacted by other people, and how other people are affected and impacted by us. And Libra is the first sign of the zodiac that has to do with the building of the collective. The wheel of the zodiac, Aries through Pisces, it builds on it. All of the signs build on one another. And the first 6 signs of the zodiac, which are Aries through Virgo, are about the growth of the individual, the development of the individual. The second 6 signs, which is Libra through Pisces, are about the development of the collective. And I've been talking about Capricorn as being that place where we have the rules and the structures of society. Well, all of that had its beginning with Libra. And Libra's deal is I want to relate. No person is an island unto themselves. I want somebody else, a friend, a companion, a partner, a work relationship. I want somebody to relate to. And so Libra is very much a description of how we go about that. And when you think about how complex collectives are, they're all about all these I-thou exchanges that are constantly going on. And so everything gets modified by all of these individual exchanges between people. And so the Libra full moon brings up and sort of, heightens, puts a floodlight or a spotlight on relationships of all types. And when we're under a great deal of stress, as we are right now during this space and time, and on top of it, we have the warrior king Mars in a challenging relationship to Uranus, Wajat, the great awakener, the shatterer, we might expect a little bit of irritation to come up in a few different places. So hold that awareness for the next couple of days, with it all kind of culminating around tomorrow night. That we might expect, you might expect some disruption in some relationship communications in your life. And so it's important for all of us to take a few deep breaths and remember that everybody's under a lot of stress and everybody's under a lot of strain. And so let's try to cut each other as well as ourselves some slack during this full moon process. In the language of Shamanic Egyptian Astrology, Libra is allied with the goddess Ma'at. And Ma'at, if you go to Egypt, it's kind of hard to tell her. If you look at the images on the temple walls, it's kind of hard to tell her apart from Isis. They look very similar. They both have beautiful rainbow wings. They're both often depicted as mature, beautiful women, dark hair with a crown. But you can always tell it's Ma'at because she has a big plume that comes out of her crown on her head. And in her myth, the newly deceased are brought to her, and she has scales. And she's allied with Libra. The symbol for Libra is the scales. And she weighs the heart of the newly deceased on her scale against her feather. And there's a journey that the soul is about to take, which is to return to the Duat, which is the Egyptian version of heaven. But in order to make that journey, their heart needs to be lighter than a feather. So in that way, she is the arbiter, the determiner of the fate of that soul. And what determines it is how light their heart is. So one of the things that the Egyptians would say to each other, the ancient Egyptians, when they'd meet each other, is they would say to each other, I wish you Ma'at. And what they meant by that is I wish you all of the good things in life. I wish you joy. I wish you happiness. I wish you blessings. I wish you healthy children and great crops and riches, lots. I wish you abundance. But I'm also wishing you, or rather, and I'm also wishing you. I'm wishing you famine. I'm wishing you death. I'm wishing you sorrow. I'm wishing you loss. I'm wishing you for a great big flood that's going to wipe out all your crops. And the reason that I did that was because Ma'at is about, it's not about one side of the scale or the other. It's not about good only or only darkness. It's not about the glass being half empty or half full. It's about the glass. The glass is capable of holding a full measure of water, anything in between, or no water at all. It's about the glass. So when the Egyptians would wish one another Ma'at, they were wishing each other the full experience that life has to offer. And so in this journey, I hope that all of you will have an opportunity to expand out from any place where you're tending to see things. And this is a very human process, so it doesn't make you bad or wrong if you focus on the darkness or if you're kind of weighed down. We all have those moments, but it's about doing our very best to see all of the totality of life. My colleague, mentor, teacher, and friend, Starwolf, has a saying, the light, the dark, no difference. And for me, that's kind of like a Zen koan. It's an amazing concept to meditate on. It's not that one's better than the other. It's not that there's no difference. It's not even that they're different. There's no difference. So that's an interesting concept to work with. And that's what Ma'at is all about. And this is what our full moon is hitting on. This is the area of contemplation, so to speak. And the full moon portal, those 3 nights when the moon is full, it's exact tomorrow night, the night of the 6th. But it's full now. If you were able to go out in the night tonight, or if it's not where you are now, it's full. And it'll be full the night after, the night of the 8th. So we have that window, that portal, when we can receive downloads from Ma'at. We can receive information into our individual consciousness, that's Aries, our individual psyches, from Ma'at, who's very much about wanting to find that synthesis between I and another, to find that I-thou exchange. So I want to invite everyone to close your eyes and take a nice deep breath. And drop in. And in some way, make connection with the earth. If you're sitting up and your feet are on the floor, imagine that you drop a grounding cord down through the floor, down into the earth. If you're lying down, drop a cord from your body into the earth. But connect with the core of Mother Gaia and feel that way that she holds you. She doesn't let us go flying off into space. She hangs on to us. So feel that connection, feel that place where you're held, and really breathe into it. Imagine that you can breathe all the way down to the core of the earth, and you can connect with that steady pulse that is the heartbeat of the mother. And imagine that you can pull that energy up and pull it all the way through your body, all the way up to the crown. And it's like a fountain that spills out over the top of your head and then comes back down in and sinks back down to the earth. So the energy is washing through you. You can feel it going through all of your chakras. And I want you to imagine that you are standing somewhere on earth under a nighttime sky. It's dark and it's a clear night. You can see stars, but you also see the full moon. And it is at its height, at its peak, a beautiful white globe in the sky, perfectly round. And the sky is so clear, you can see the stars around it. Some nights, if it's cloudy or the full moon makes it difficult to see the stars, but this night is so clear. You can see the stars as well as that beautiful white globe. And I invite you to focus on it. Focus on that full moon. And remembering that connection that you have with Mother Gaia, imagine now that as you inhale, you breathe in the energy of this full moon. It's the Libra full moon, and you're breathing it in. And it's passing through you. It's connecting up with the core of the earth. And as you exhale, you're sending energy from Gaia, from Earth, to this beautiful full moon. Earth and the moon, we are sisters. Our closest space neighbor, friend, part of our family. She who orbits around us, who is connected to us and to Earth. And so feel that connection in your own body. And I invite now, out of this energy of the moon, you see a figure emerge. A figure with beautiful, multicolored wings. And she is soaring through the sky. This is Ma'at, using her wings to drift and float through the night sky. And she comes all the way down to earth. And she lands in front of you, her beautiful wings outspread. And she may come in the form that she is most often portrayed in ancient Egypt, that of a beautiful woman with rainbow wings and a plume in her crown, or she may take another form entirely. There's no wrong here. These archetypes show up in our downloads, our visions, in whatever way is right for us. So allow her to come to you in whatever way she chooses. But she stands now in front of you, and in some way, she stretches out her energy, perhaps her wings, something about her, and she touches your heart. And you can feel the touch of the goddess in your heart chakra. And I invite you to breathe that in. I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds and just let you feel that. Feel the touch of the goddess in your heart. And Ma'at now is going to share with you a vision, an understanding, something about yourself, of the ways in your life in which you polarize You get stuck in one side of the equation, whether it's a glass half full or a glass half empty place, or we could call it light polarized or stuck in the muck. That's a Star Wars saying. Or liking the light, fearing the dark, liking the dark, being wary of the light. Whatever your version is, we've all got one. It's part of being human. Ma'at wants to show you something that's relevant, and she will show you either through a memory, an image, a picture, perhaps a symbol, maybe a direct message, words, an emotion perhaps. Whatever it is, allow yourself to receive it. And Ma'at now is going to expand her wings. If she's been touching your heart, she moves her wings back and she expands them, literally or symbolically. And she's showing you that opposite point. And she's giving you a vision, an experience of the opposite side of your polarity. If your heart's been closed down, she's showing you what it feels like to have it wide open. If your heart's been wildly expanded, she's showing you what it feels like to be shut down. She's showing you the entire spectrum of experience around your specific vision. And so I'm going to be quiet again for a few moments and allow you to experience this. Remember to breathe. And stepping up behind you now comes another rainbow winged goddess. One, if you've done these meditations with me before, you've already encountered, you know her. This is Isis. And she stretches her beautiful rainbow wings behind you. And the tips of the wings of Isis and the tips of the wings of Ma'at touch. And you are held within the rainbow wings of these two beautiful aspects of the divine feminine. And held within their wings is both sides of your question, both sides of your story. And I invite you to breathe, really breathe into what it feels like to be held in the container of an expanded polarity, to not be just on one side, but to feel the expansiveness of the entire spectrum. And again, I'm going to be quiet for a few moments and just let you soak this in, let you experience it, breathe it in. and feeling the wings of these beautiful goddesses circle around you. They will stay with you. They will hold you through all that you will experience in the days ahead. Take a nice deep breath and come back into the room. So during this full moon portal, if you find yourself getting stuck in one side of the question, or if you encounter someone else who's stuck on the other side of the question, remember what it feels like to be held in the rainbow wings of these beautiful aspects of the divine feminine. And remember that feeling of expansion. There is no right or wrong. There is only a both and. There's only an is. And yes, we have things we like and things we don't like. That's okay. But holding the bigger container remembers that there's always another side of the question. So thank you. Thank you for being with me. And I will see you next time. If you'd like to follow me on Facebook, you can find my page at Shamanic Astrology. And my website is shamanicstaurology.com. See you again.